The party ended, but he never saw dawn. Welcome to Mystery Case. I am your host, Detective Echo. Drop your location below. Your comments mean everything. Let's begin. If you've never watched Nero Wolfe get annoyed before lunch, you've missed a quiet civic spectacle. He doesn't shout or throw anything. He simply becomes, in the brownstone on West 35th, a large, immovable fact with an edge on it. It was 11:45 on a Tuesday. Fritz Brenner was in the kitchen preparing noon. I was in the front room with the mail when the doorbell rang, twice, hard. From the office, Wolfe's voice rolled out, velvet and iron. "Archie, if that is Inspector Kramer, I am indisposed." "It's only the bell." "Then ascertain who is committing the offense." I opened the street door and found a woman who looked as though she had been built for refusal. "They call me." "My name is Lorna Haverhill." "I call me." "My name is Lorna Haverhill. I must speak to Nero Wolfe, at once." "Mr. Wolfe is particular," I told her. "Give me the reason in one sentence, and I'll see if it survives." Her chin lifted. "It concerns a crime that has not yet occurred." That was a novelty. In my experience, unborn crimes are hardest to refund, and the interest starts immediately for you. "Come in," I said, "before it happens on the stoop." In Wolfe's office, she sat in the red chair, back straight, handbag on her lap as if it contained glass. Wolfe regarded her from behind the desk, his bulk planted, his eyes alert in a face that refused to show surprise. "You have interrupted my morning, Miss Haverhill," he said. "Do so efficiently." She nodded once. "There is a man named Edwin Kester." Wolfe's eyelids moved. "Ah, the host." I looked from one to the other. "Host of what?" Miss Haverhill's mouth tightened. "He hosts people, private gatherings, exclusive dinners. He introduces, directs conversation, and collects what is said. He profits from it." "From snobbery?" I offered. She ignored me without rudeness. "He has arranged a gathering for Thursday, at dawn." "At dawn," I echoed. "That's when decent secrets are still asleep." "It will be in a townhouse on East 73rd. 6 guests, no servants, no staff except Mr. Kester. He calls it a breakfast of candor." Wolfe made a small sound of contempt. "Puerile." "It is also dangerous," she said. "Someone intends to use it to destroy a man. Not by violence, by revelation, by arranging truth like a weapon." Wolfe's gaze pinned her. "You ask me to intervene in a social amusement." "I ask you to prevent a crime," she corrected. "Mr. Kester extorts his guests. He collects their secrets, then offers protection. If they refuse, he invites them to breakfast." "You have evidence?" Wolfe asked. "A letter," she said. "And fair. My brother will be one of the 6. Wolfe's fingers touched together. "Your brother's name?" "Grant Haverhill." "And why do you come to me?" Wolfe asked, "instead of the police?" "Because the police will laugh," she said, "and because Mr. Kester has a way of making laughter expensive." Wolfe looked at me. "Archie." "Yeah?" "Take the letter." She drew an envelope from her bag. Plain, sealed. I took it, felt the faint tremor in her hand, and passed it to Wolfe. Then we slit it open, unfolded the sheet, and read with the slow exactness he used on orchid catalogues. His face stayed calm, only his eyes sharpened. When he finished, he placed the paper on the blotter. "This is not extortion," he said. Miss Haverhill's breath caught. "Then you will not help?" Wolfe's mouth curved, barely, into something that was not a smile. "It is worse. It is an invitation to complicity." She stared. "I don't understand." "I do," Wolfe said. "Mr. Kester proposes a transaction, silence in exchange for submission. He offers his guests the privilege of becoming accomplices to their own degradation." Wolfe's eyes stayed on the woman. "Miss Haverhill, is your brother innocent?" Her shoulders tightened. "Innocent is not the word. He is vulnerable. He is decent. said, "and that is a kind of stupidity in certain rooms." Wolfe leaned back a fraction. "Mr. Kester has already approached you?" "Yes," she said. "He telephoned. He was polite. He said my brother would see the morning properly if he came. And if he didn't—" She stopped. "He said there are mornings that never arrive." That line landed in the room like a cold coin. Wolfe's gaze shifted past her to the ordered silence of his house. Miss Haverhill asked, very softly, "Will you help us, Mr. Wolfe?" Wolfe's voice, when it came, was controlled and final. "I will not leave this house for Edwin Kester's theatrics, but I will not permit his theatrics to touch my house and use my name as seasoning." He turned to me. "Archie, cancel my lunch." I blinked. "That's grounds for a riot." "Endure it," he said. "Then telephone Saul Panzer. Tell him I require information on Mr. Edwin Kester before 5 o'clock. Miss Haverhill's eyes widened. "You will take the case?" Wolfe's gaze returned to her, heavy and precise. "I will take," he said, "the offense." Miss Haverhill did not relax. She merely shifted from alarm to concentration, as if bracing for instructions in a language she only partly understood. "What do you require of me?" she asked. "Accuracy," Wolfe said. "You will provide the names of the other 5 guests." She hesitated a fraction of a second too long for comfort. I noticed. Wolfe certainly did. "You know them," he said. "Yes," she admitted. "Mr. Kester prides himself on symmetry. The guests are connected." "List them." She folded her gloves deliberately before speaking. "My brother, Grant Haverhill, a corporate attorney. Then Claudia Dane. She manages a philanthropic foundation. Martin Brix, an art dealer. Senator Lowell Dunning, and Dr. Elias Shaw." I whistled softly. "That's a tidy breakfast. Law, money, art, politics, and medicine. All you need is a priest, and the apocalypse can start early." "Connections," Wolfe prompted. 5 years ago," she said, "they all served on the advisory board of the Aegis Initiative." I glanced at Wolfe. His eyes flickered. He had been waiting. "The Aegis Initiative," he repeated. "A venture capital fund masquerading as civic reform." She nodded. "It collapsed. Publicly, it was a failed investment in urban housing. Privately—" She stopped. "Privately?" Wolfe's voice was silk drawn over wire. "There were accusations," she said. "Funds diverted. Influence traded. Nothing proven. It dissolved quietly." "And Edwin Kester?" I asked. "He was not on the board. He was adjacent. He hosted their dinners, introduced donors, arranged conversations." "A spider who prefers silk cushions," I said. Wolfe's gaze turned to me briefly in reproof, then back to her. "You believe Mr. Kester possesses information concerning improprieties during the initiative's tenure?" "Yes, and intends to deploy it at breakfast." She nodded. Wolfe steepled his fingers. "You have described opportunity. You have not described motive." "Motive," she echoed. "Why now?" Wolfe demanded. 5 years is a long fermentation. Her composure slipped. "Because Senator Dunning is poised for a cabinet appointment. Because Martin Brix is negotiating a museum acquisition that will double his reputation. Because my brother has just been named counsel to a federal commission. Because Claudia Dane's foundation is under review. And Dr. Shaw, yes, he is being considered for a prestigious hospital directorship. They are all about to rise." "And Mr. Kester?" Wolfe asked. "He has begun to fall," she said quietly. "His gatherings are no longer fashionable. He is not invited as often as he invites." Wolfe grunted. "Obsolescence is a powerful irritant." I picked up the letter from the blotter and skimmed it again. It was elegantly brief. An invitation to observe the sunrise of mutual understanding. A suggestion that certain matters from the Aegis years might benefit from collective recollection. a warning phrased as courtesy that absence would be interpreted as confession. "He doesn't threaten," I said. "He choreographs." "Yes," she said. "That is what frightens me." Wolfe closed his eyes for a moment, not in fatigue, but in calculation. The room settled around him, the books, the globe, the faint hum of Manhattan beyond the windows. This was his territory. Any scheme that sought to use words as leverage had, by definition, trespassed. "You will leave this letter," he said. "It's yours. You will also provide me with any correspondence your brother has received from Mr. Kester." She stiffened. "Grant does not know I'm here." "Then he is a fool," Wolfe said flatly. "And you are attempting to compensate." Her eyes flashed. "He believes he can handle it." "Can he?" She did not answer. Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, escort Miss Haverhill out. Obtain her telephone numbers. Instruct her to inform her brother that I require an interview at 6 this evening. Here." She rose. He won't agree." "Then," Wolfe said, "he will attend breakfast without counsel." That settled it. She inclined her head, a concession that was nearly respect, and allowed me to guide her to the hall. At the door, she paused. "Mr. Goodwin, does he always sound as though the world has disappointed him personally?" "Only when it deserves to," I said. "Don't worry. If he's irritated, it means he's interested." When I returned, Wolfe had not moved. He was staring at the letter as though it were an insect specimen pinned under glass. "Well?" I asked. "Well," he echoed. "Mr. Edwin Kester is conducting a trial." "For what crime?" "For ambition," Wolfe said. "He intends to force his guests to acknowledge their complicity in past decisions and bind them together in renewed silence, and to expose one of them as scapegoat." "Which?" "That depends," Wolfe said, "on which outcome profits him most." "You think he'll actually name someone?" "He will imply," Wolfe said. "Implication is more durable than accusation." I leaned against the desk. "So, what's the play?" Wolfe's eyes lifted to mine. "Information precedes strategy. Saul will supply it. You will speak with Mr. Haverhill this evening. You will observe not only what he says, but what he fears." "And Kester?" Wolfe's lips thinned. "He will not expect resistance before dawn. That is his error." The house phone rang. Wolfe did not reach for it. "Archie," I picked up. "Nero Wolfe's residence." The voice was male, smooth, with a faint lilt of amusement. "Mr. Goodwin, I presume. This is Edwin Kester." I felt the current run through the wire. "You're calling about orchids?" I asked pleasantly. "I'm calling about breakfast," he said. "Kindly inform Mr. Wolfe that I would be delighted if he would join us. As an observer." I looked at Wolfe. He was watching me, expression unreadable. "I'll pass it along," I said. "Please do," Kester replied. "Tell him the morning can be educational." The line clicked dead. I replaced the receiver slowly. "He invites you," I said. Wolfe's eyes closed once, briefly. "Of course he does." "And?" "And," Wolfe said, his voice settling into something colder than annoyance. "The host has already begun to err." I didn't ask how. When Wolfe said a man had erred, it meant the man had breathed in the wrong place. "He called too soon," I suggested. "He called it all," Wolfe said. "A strategist who announces his strategy is either vain or desperate. Possibly both." "He didn't announce much." "He announced awareness," Wolfe corrected. "He knows Miss Haverhill came here." I felt that settle. "You think he followed her?" "Or anticipated her," Wolfe said. "In either case, he's not merely arranging a breakfast. He is managing responses." The idea of being managed before lunch didn't improve my mood. "So he's watching the brownstone?" "Undoubtedly," Wolfe said. "Archie, telephone Saul. Instruct him to come at once." I did. Saul Panzer's voice came on dry and economical, and when I told him Wolfe required information on Edwin Kester immediately, he didn't waste a syllable asking why. He said he'd be there in 30 minutes. By then it was 12:30, and Fritz was hovering in the hall like a ghost with a ladle. Wolfe ignored him with heroic discipline. At 6, precisely, Grant Haverhill arrived. He resembled his sister in the eyes, but not in the spine. Mid-30s, well-tailored, hands restless. He shook mine with more pressure than necessary and glanced around the office as if assessing exits. Wolfe indicated the red chair. "Sit." Haverhill complied, crossing one leg too quickly. "You have received an invitation from Mr. Edwin Kester," Wolfe began. Haverhill's jaw tightened. "My sister came here." "She did. I told her not to." "Because you are capable of handling it?" Wolfe asked. "Yes." "How?" Haverhill hesitated. "By attending, listening, determining what he wants." "And then?" Wolfe's voice was mild. "Negotiating." "Negotiating what?" Wolfe asked. "Your conscience?" Color rose in Haverhill's face. There was nothing illegal at Aegis. "That was not my question," Wolfe said. Silence stretched, and I watched Haverhill's fingers press into his knee. "Funds were moved," he said finally. "Not stolen, reallocated. There was pressure, political pressure. We were assured the housing projects would proceed." "But they did not," Wolfe said. "No." "Who benefited?" "No one," Haverhill said too quickly. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "That is improbable." Haverhill exhaled sharply. "Investments were shifted into a private development firm. The market turned. It failed. The optics were unfortunate." "Optics," I murmured. "That's when the facts need makeup." He shot me a look. "You weren't there." "True," I said. "I'm enjoying the highlights." Wolfe raised a hand slightly. I shut up. "Mr. Kester," Wolfe said, "was aware of these reallocations." "He arranged the meetings," Haverhill admitted. He knew who spoke to whom." "And he documented it," Haverhill's silence answered. Wolfe nodded once. "He now intends to leverage that knowledge." "Yes." "Against whom?" "All of us," Haverhill said, "unless one of us agrees to assume responsibility." "There it is," Wolfe said softly. Haverhill looked up sharply. "What?" "The scapegoat," Wolfe said. "He will not accuse 5 people. He will isolate one. The others will permit it in exchange for silence." Haverhill's composure cracked. "That's monstrous." "It is efficient," Wolfe corrected. "And you believe he intends you to be that one," Wolfe continued. Haverhill swallowed. "I was counsel. I drafted memoranda. My name is on documents." "Who else is vulnerable?" Wolfe asked. "Claudia Dane authorized transfers. Bricks recommended the development firm, and Senator Dunning advocated for the reallocation publicly. Dr. Shaw endorsed it to donors." "A perfect circle," I said. "Everyone with ink on their fingers." "And Kester," Wolfe said, "has invited you to breakfast at dawn." "Why dawn?" Haverhill blinked. "Symbolism." "No," Wolfe said. "Control. Fatigue reduces resistance. Early light encourages confession." "That's theatrical," Haverhill muttered. "Yes," Wolfe agreed. "Mr. Kester is theatrical." There was a knock. Saul entered without waiting, compact and unadorned. He nodded to Wolfe, ignored me, and glanced at Haverhill as one more variable. "You have something?" Wolfe asked. "Preliminary," Saul said. "Kester's finances are strained. 2 major clients withdrew this year. There's a pending lawsuit, breach of confidentiality, settled quietly." "By whom?" Wolfe asked. "Martin Bricks," Saul said. Haverhill stiffened. Saul continued. "Kester owns the townhouse on East 73rd through a holding company. No staff listed. He purchases specialty foods in small quantities, high-end. Deliveries scheduled for tomorrow afternoon." "For 6 guests," Wolfe murmured. 7, Saul corrected. "He added 1 order late this morning." I felt it before Haverhill did. 7, I said. Saul nodded. An extra place setting requested. Name not given. Haverhill's face drained. He expects someone else. Wolfe's gaze slid to me. Kester invited you, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. As an observer. He wants you there, Haverhill said. Why? To legitimize the proceedings, Wolfe said. If I attend, I validate the drama. Saul added, There's more. Kester made a call this afternoon. To a private security firm. Brief consultation. Topic not disclosed. Insurance, I said. Or containment, Wolfe said. Haverhill rose halfway from his chair. This is insane. I won't be blackmailed. You already are, Wolfe said calmly. The question is whether you will be sacrificed. Haverhill stared at him. What do you intend to do? Wolfe regarded him steadily. You will attend the breakfast. Haverhill recoiled. What? You will attend, Wolfe repeated. You will behave as though you are prepared to negotiate. And you? I will not attend, Wolfe said, but Mr. Kester will believe I'm present. Silence thickened. That's impossible, Haverhill said. Wolfe's eyes gleamed faintly. On the contrary, it is already arranged. I stared at him. It is? Wolfe did not look at me. Archie, he said, tomorrow you will rise before dawn. I groaned. That's cruel and unusual. Endure it, Wolfe said. You will attend Mr. Kester's breakfast in my stead. Haverhill's voice shook. And then? Wolfe's gaze hardened. And then, he said, the host will learn that morning does not belong to him. If you've never watched Nero Wolfe construct a battle plan without moving anything but his lips, you might mistake it for digestion. It isn't. It's architecture. Grant Haverhill left a little after 7, looking as though he had just been told to attend his own trial with good posture. Saul stayed. I poured coffee. Wolfe ignored it. You will not go as yourself, Wolfe told me. That's a relief. I don't function before 8. You will go as my representative, he said, explicitly empowered to observe, to question, and to withdraw. Withdraw? I asked. Yes. At the precise moment, Mr. Kester expects capitulation. Saul leaned against the bookcase. Security firm he called specializes in discreet presence. 2 men, likely outside. Armed? I asked. Licensed, Saul said. Mr. Kester anticipates resistance, Wolfe murmured. He wishes to prevent disorder. That suggests he intends provocation. Meaning? I said. He will present evidence, Wolfe replied. Documents, recordings, correspondence. He will imply dissemination unless agreement is reached. Saul added, lawsuit Bricks settled? Allegation was breach of confidence. Kester recorded private dinner conversations. Bricks paid to prevent release. I whistled softly. So, breakfast comes with playback. Wolfe nodded. Archie, you will assume that every word spoken tomorrow is being preserved. Then I'll be charming, I said. No, Wolfe corrected. You will be irritating. Saul's mouth twitched. Wolfe continued. You will request clarity. Definitions. Dates. You will compel Mr. Kester to specify his accusations in front of all present. And if he refuses? He will not, Wolfe said. His vanity requires performance. We reviewed the likely dynamics. Claudia Dane, cautious and philanthropic in public, rumored to be ruthless in private negotiations. Martin Bricks, smooth, protective of reputation. Senator Dunning, practiced at deflection. Dr. Elias Shaw, precise, perhaps naive about political currents. And Grant Haverhill, lawyer with ink on his hands. Kester's leverage depends on unity through fear, Wolfe said. If they fracture, he loses control. So I fracture them, I said. You expose inconsistencies, Wolfe corrected. The fracture will follow. By 10, the house was quiet. The Wolfe retired early, a rarity that indicated seriousness. I set 2 alarms and went to bed with the unpleasant sensation that dawn was a personal insult. At 4:30, I was upright and resentful. By 5:15, I was in a cab heading uptown, Manhattan still half asleep and grey. The air had that cold, tentative quality just before sunrise, when the city hasn't decided whether to forgive you. The townhouse on East 73rd was discreet and expensive, its facade restored without ostentation. 2 men stood near the entrance, coats too heavy for fashion, eyes too attentive for residence. One of them regarded me with professional neutrality. "Archie Goodwin," I said, representing Nero Wolfe. He hesitated just long enough to confirm something through an earpiece, then stepped aside. "You're expected." Of course I was. Inside, the foyer smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood. Edwin Kester stood in the drawing-room doorway, immaculate in a dark suit, tie precisely knotted, expression composed. "Mr. Goodwin," he said warmly. "How generous of Mr. Wolfe." "He regrets the early hour," I said. "His orchid's object." Kester's smile flickered. "Naturally. Please join us." The dining room had been arranged with deliberate symmetry. A round table, 7 place settings, silver, porcelain, linen, no servants in sight. The guests were already seated except for 1 chair. Grant Haverhill gave me a quick look that mixed relief and dread. Claudia Dane inclined her head politely. Brix offered a thin smile. Senator Dunning studied me as though calculating polling data. Dr. Shaw adjusted his spectacles. Kester gestured to the empty seat. "I reserved this for Mr. Wolfe. I assume you will occupy it?" "Temporarily," I said, sitting. "He dislikes symbolism." "Symbolism," Kester said lightly, "is merely clarity in costume." Breakfast was served buffet-style from a sideboard, pastries, fruit, eggs under silver domes. Kester poured coffee himself, the attentive host. When we were seated, he did not immediately begin. He waited until the first rim of sunlight touched the windows. "There," he said softly. "Morning." No one responded. Kester folded his hands. "We are here as friends." Brix made a small sound that wasn't agreement. "As friends," Kester continued smoothly, "who once shared an enterprise. The Aegis Initiative." Dunning cleared his throat. That matter was concluded. "Administratively," Kester agreed. "Morally, perhaps less so." Claudia Dane's voice was cool. "If you intend to sermonize, Edwin, and I have a board meeting at 9, he smiled at her. "Efficiency, as always. Then I will be concise." He reached beneath the table and produced a slim leather portfolio. From it, he withdrew copies of documents, memoranda, transfer authorizations, email printouts. Haverhill's jaw tightened. Shaw's eyes widened faintly. "These," Kester said, "represent conversations and decisions during Aegis's reallocation phase. Decisions that, if misinterpreted, could appear self-serving." "Misinterpreted by whom?" I asked pleasantly. Kester's gaze shifted to me. "By regulators, journalists, political opponents." "So you interpret them correctly?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "And your interpretation is?" "That each of you acted under pressure, seeking the greater good." "That's generous," I said. "You should run for office." Dunning's lips compressed. Kester continued, "However, perception can be adjusted, with cooperation." "And cooperation entails?" Claudia asked. "A public statement," Kester said, "from one of you, accepting responsibility for the misallocation, framing it as overzealous judgment. The rest express regret, but deny direct involvement." The words settled like frost. "And the volunteer?" Brix asked quietly. Kester's smile thinned. "I had hoped one of you might offer." Silence. I sipped coffee. "You're proposing a sacrifice?" "I'm proposing preservation." Kester said. For a fee? I asked. He looked at me steadily. For discretion. Which you sell, I said. Haverhill spoke suddenly. Why now, Edwin? Kester's eyes glinted. Because opportunity has returned. Several of you stand on thresholds, as it would be unfortunate if the past intruded. And if no one volunteers? Shaw asked. Kester closed the portfolio gently. Then I will be obliged to share my records more broadly. Transparency, after all, is fashionable. The sun climbed higher, light strengthening across the table. I set my cup down. Mr. Kester, I said, before anyone contemplates martyrdom, perhaps you should clarify something. His gaze sharpened. Yes? Which of them? I asked. Have you already betrayed? The question did what I intended. It didn't explode. It thinned the air. Kester's expression held for a fraction too long before he smiled again. Betrayed, Mr. Goodwin? That's a melodramatic term. I get up early. I economize on syllables, I said. You said transparency is fashionable. Fashion requires rehearsal. And it was subtle, but it was enough. Kester. It was subtle, but it was enough. Kester noticed. His eyes flicked around the table, measuring. I invited you all simultaneously, he said. That wasn't my question. Haverhill leaned forward. Edwin, have you spoken to anyone individually? Kester's tone cooled. I have maintained friendships. Friendships that required payments? Briggs asked quietly. There it was. The word hung between them like a drawn wire. Kester's gaze moved to Briggs with careful calm. You refer to a settlement 5 months ago. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that cost me 7 figures, Briggs said. Claudia Dane's brows lifted slightly. To 7? Dunning's head turned sharply toward Briggs. You never mentioned because it was irrelevant, Briggs snapped. On the contrary, I said pleasantly, it's suddenly very relevant. Kester's voice remained smooth. Mr. Briggs was concerned about certain recordings. We resolved the matter amicably. Recordings, Shaw repeated faintly. Yes, Kester said. I document conversations. It is my profession. Without consent? I asked. Consent is contextual, Kester replied. Like morality, I said. Haverhill's eyes were on Briggs now. You paid him. Briggs's jaw tightened. To prevent distortion. Or disclosure? Claudia asked. Enough, Kester said lightly. We are drifting. No, I said. We're clarifying. The sun had climbed high enough to illuminate the documents on the table. I reached for one without asking and scanned it. Sub an email chain. Subject line, RE. Allocation adjustment. Names visible. Dates from 5 years ago. You kept all of this, I said. Of course. And you shared some of it already, I said, glancing at Briggs. Kester's smile thinned. Mr. Briggs required reassurance. By threat, Briggs said. Dunning shifted in his chair. Edwin, if you have compromised one of us, how can we trust your discretion now? Because, Kester said evenly, I'm offering you a solution. A solution that involves one of us volunteering for ruin, Claudia said. Temporary discomfort, Kester corrected, followed by rehabilitation. I would assist in shaping the narrative. You would manage the scandal you create, I said. Efficient. Kester's gaze snapped to me. Mr. Goodwin, you are here as observer. Observer with questions, I said. You've already extracted money from one guest. You're now demanding public sacrifice from another. What assurance do they have that you won't return in a year for encore? Shaw's hands trembled slightly as he folded them. That is a valid concern. Kester's composure hardened. I'm not extorting you. I'm protecting you. From whom? Haverhill asked. From consequences, Kester replied. Which you threaten to unleash, Claudia said. The circle was tightening. I could feel it. Kester had expected unease, perhaps pleading. He had not expected arithmetic. Dunning leaned back. If we refuse, Kester's eyes were flat now. Then the full archive will be transmitted to appropriate parties by noon. Today? Shaw breathed. Yes. Automated? I asked. Kester inclined his head slightly. Contingencies exist. Where? I asked, and he smiled faintly. You are not here to interrogate me. Actually, I said, that's precisely why I'm here. Haverhill turned to me sharply. Archie. I raised a hand. Grant, has Mr. Kester ever given you a copy of any recording? No. Claudia. She shook her head once. Senator. Dunning's lips compressed. No. Doctor? No. Martin? Briggs hesitated. Only excerpts. So, I said, the only person who has verified the authenticity of these recordings is Mr. Briggs, who paid to suppress them. Kester's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Which means, I continued, the rest of you are operating on trust. Trust in Edwin's archives, Claudia said coolly. Trust in my integrity, Kester said sharply. I leaned back. That's a volatile commodity. Silence settled again, heavier this time. Haverhill spoke carefully. Edwin, what precisely would the statement say? Kester exhaled, regaining rhythm. That Mr. Haverhill, as counsel, exercised independent judgment in authorizing reallocations, that he regrets exceeding his mandate. The rest of you express surprise. Haverhill went still. Claudia's eyes flashed. You've already drafted it. Efficiency, Kester said. So you had your volunteer selected before we arrived, Dunning said. Kester did not answer. I looked at Haverhill. His face had drained of color but not resolve. Grant, I said mildly, did you exceed your mandate? He met my eyes. No. Did anyone instruct you to move funds improperly? He hesitated. Claudia leaned forward. Answer. Haverhill swallowed. We discussed options, as a group. There, I said. Collective. Kester's voice sharpened. Collective ambiguity is precisely the problem. No, I said. Your problem is that ambiguity doesn't pay unless someone panics. Kester rose slightly from his chair, hands on the table. Gentlemen, Miss Dane, I'm offering you order. And selling fear, Claudia said. Shaw stood abruptly. I will not be coerced. The two security men appeared in the doorway, not entering, merely visible. Please sit, Kester said smoothly. No one is being coerced. Shaw sat slowly, eyes wide. I studied Kester. The Polish was cracking, not visibly, not to anyone who didn't look for it. But I was looking. Mr. Kester, I said quietly, you mentioned contingencies. Automated transmissions by noon. Yes. Then you won't mind if we verify them. His gaze sharpened. Verify? Yes, I said, because as of this moment, you have a more immediate problem. And that is, he asked. I smiled faintly. You've miscalculated your audience. Kester's eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, Mr. Goodwin. Gladly, I said. You built this morning on isolation. You assumed each of them feared the others more than you. But you made one mistake. And that is? You demonstrated prior betrayal. Briggs shifted but did not protest. When Martin paid you, I continued, you established precedent. You are not guardian of secrets. You are broker. That changes the math. Claudia Dane's gaze sharpened. Yes, it does. Dunning leaned forward, steepling his fingers. If he extracted money once, he can do so again. Or release the material regardless, Shaw added hoarsely. Kester's composure thinned. I acted discreetly. You acted profitably, I corrected. And now you're asking for trust. He turned to the table. You all know what is at stake. Your careers. Our careers were at stake 5 years ago, Claudia said coolly. You were at the table then, Edwin. You encouraged the reallocation. Kester's jaw tightened. I facilitated discussion. You advocated it, she said. You described the development firm as politically resilient. Haverhill looked at her sharply. You never told me that. I didn't need to, she replied. We were all there. Dunning's voice dropped. If he releases anything, he implicates himself. The room stilled. Kester laughed softly. I was not a board member. You were present at strategy meetings, Brix said. You introduced the developer. And recommended the financing structure, Claudia added. I watched Kester carefully. The morning light had lost its romance. It was plain now, exposing texture. You're suggesting, Kester said slowly, that I share liability. I'm suggesting, Dunning replied, that mutually assured destruction is inelegant. Shaw pushed his glasses up. Edwin, if you release those documents, investigators will ask how you obtained internal memoranda. Kester's voice sharpened. I preserved what was shared in my presence. Without authorization, Haverhill said. That is contestable, Kester snapped. Is it? I asked mildly. Because the lawsuit with Martin suggests otherwise. Brix's gaze hardened. I settled to avoid spectacle, not because you were correct. The two security men shifted slightly in the doorway. Not threatening, just reminders. I rose casually and walked to the sideboard, pouring myself more coffee. No one stopped me. I took my time. Mr. Kester, I said over my shoulder, you mentioned automated transmissions. To whom? He did not answer. Journalists, I pressed. Regulators? Political rivals? Silence. That's another miscalculation, I said, returning to my seat. Because if you had already transmitted the archive, you wouldn't need volunteers. And if you haven't, you're still in possession. Claudia's eyes flicked to me. She understood. You're bluffing, she said softly to Kester. He smiled thinly. Am I? Yes, she said. If the material were already disseminated, you would not require our cooperation. You would simply watch the fallout. Dunning nodded slowly. Your leverage depends on control. And control depends on exclusivity, I added, which evaporates once shared. Kester's fingers tightened on the leather portfolio. You presume much. No, I said. I observe. Haverhill leaned forward, voice steadier now. Edwin, if you release anything, we respond jointly. We contest context. We disclose your role. Shaw swallowed. And the recordings. Illegally obtained, Brix said flatly. Kester's composure fractured for the first time. Not loudly, just a flicker in the eyes. You would destroy yourselves to spite me? He asked quietly. No, Claudia replied. We would defend ourselves together, as we should have done 5 years ago. That hit its mark. Old fault lines realigned. I let the silence stretch. Wolfe had told me to irritate. This was better. This was arithmetic unfolding in public. Kester straightened slowly. You overestimate your unity. Perhaps, Dunning said. But you have underestimated our capacity for retaliation. Kester looked at me. And Mr. Wolfe orchestrates this. I observe, I said again. His gaze lingered, measuring whether I carried more than sarcasm. The clock on the mantel ticked toward 7:30. Very well, Kester said finally. Suppose I concede that mutual exposure is undesirable. We still confront risk. Aegis can resurface without my assistance. Then we address it directly, Claudia said, without theatrics. And without tribute, Brix added. Shaw nodded faintly. Transparency, perhaps. Kester laughed once, short and sharp. You will confess? We will contextualize, Dunning said. Collectively. The word landed heavy. I leaned back. Seems you're outvoted. Kester's eyes cooled. Not entirely. He rose, walked to a small desk against the wall and opened a drawer. From it he withdrew a slim flash drive. and holding it between thumb and forefinger. "This," he said, "contains everything: documents, audio, correspondence." No one moved. "If I insert it into that laptop," he continued, gesturing to a closed machine on the desk, "and execute a simple command, the archive distributes." "Automated?" I asked. "Yes." "Then do it," Claudia said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. She met Kester's gaze steadily. "If you believe exposure is preferable, proceed. We will respond together." Kester studied her. The room felt very small. "Bold," he said softly. "Practical," she replied. His hand hovered over the laptop. I watched his eyes, not the drive. There was calculation there, but also something else. Hesitation. He wanted capitulation, not detonation. "Edwin," Haverhill said quietly, "if you do that, you're finished." Kester's jaw tightened. Because," I added, "once you release it, you have nothing left to sell." The silence deepened, thick as velvet. The flash drive remained suspended between his fingers, and for the first time that morning, Edwin Kester did not look like a host. He looked like a man who had just discovered that dawn does not guarantee advantage. Kester's fingers did not tremble, but they tightened. The flash drive hovered, then lowered a fraction. "You mistake me," he said quietly. "I am not dependent on repetition. Influence requires only one decisive act." "Then you should have performed it before breakfast," I said. His eyes snapped to mine. Claudia Dane rose slowly from her chair. "Edwin, if you intend to destroy yourself, do it cleanly, but do not pretend it is charity." Dunning stood as well, not aggressively, just upright. "We can contain Aegis. We cannot contain you if you escalate." Brix pushed his chair back. "Insert it," he said. "Let's see if you truly mean it." Dr. Shaw remained seated, pale but steady. Haverhill did not move at all. He was watching Kester as though memorizing him. The two security men shifted their weight in the doorway. They were no longer decoration. They were contingency. Kester's gaze moved from face to face, calculating. He had built this tableau expecting fracture, whispered bargains, perhaps a tearful volunteer. Instead he had unity, brittle but real. "You assume the archive incriminates me equally," he said. "It incriminates proximity," Claudia replied. "Proximity is enough." "And the recordings?" he pressed. "Unlawful," Brix said flatly. "And you have already demonstrated motive for manipulation." That one struck. Kester's lips thinned. I glanced at the laptop. Closed. Power light dark. "You said execute a simple command," I said casually. "That implies preparation, scripted distribution, scheduled recipients." Silence. "Meaning," I continued, "you set it up in advance." Kester did not answer. "Which means," I said, "you anticipated refusal." Dunning's eyes sharpened. "You were prepared to detonate from the start." "Insurance," Kester said. "No," I said. "Leverage." He turned abruptly and crossed to the desk. The flash drive slid into the laptop with a soft click. He opened the lid. The screen glowed awake. "No one breathed," he typed. Not much. A few keystrokes. The screen reflected faintly in his eyes. "Edwin," Haverhill said quietly, "think." Kester's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "You will not recover from this," Claudia said. "Nor will you," he replied. That depends," Dunning said. "Scandal fades. Extortion does not." Kester's jaw flexed. I rose and walked toward him, slowly, hands visible. The security men straightened, but I didn't look at them. "Mind if I observe?" I asked mildly. He didn't answer, but he didn't stop me. I stood beside him, angled so I could see the screen. An email interface, multiple addresses preloaded, attachments queued. "Journalists," I murmured. "Regulatory agencies, opposition research firms, you cast a wide net." Kester's eyes flicked sideways. Transparency. I leaned closer, scanning quickly. Subject line, Aegis reconsidered. Attachments listed by date. You prepared this recently, I said. Metadata from last week. He stiffened. Which suggests, I continued softly, you've been planning this escalation for days. Behind us, and chairs scraped slightly as the others edged nearer. Edwin, Claudia said, voice low. You don't want this. Kester's finger hovered over the trackpad. Before you click, I said quietly, consider one more variable. He did not look at me. And that is? You invited Nero Wolfe, a flicker in his eyes. You called him personally, I continued. You wanted him here, as observer. As witness, Kester corrected. Witness to your leverage, I said. But you misjudged him. Kester's finger stilled. He does not attend spectacles, I went on. He dismantles them. Kester's voice cooled. He's not here. No, I agreed. But he anticipated this. Kester's lips tightened. Anticipated what? That you would need the illusion of inevitability, I said. Automated distribution, dramatic timing, dawn. His finger trembled now, barely. And he asked me, I said softly, to verify something. Verify? Kester echoed. Yes. I reached past him, not touching, and tapped a key. The email window flickered. An error message appeared. Connection unavailable. The room went very still. Kester stared at the screen. No signal, I said mildly. Wireless disabled. His head snapped toward the router on the shelf. Dark. You relied on the townhouse network, I continued. But someone requested a service interruption at 5 this morning. Kester's face drained. Saul's voice had been quiet in my memory the night before. We can manage access points. You, Kester began. I observe, I said again. Claudia exhaled slowly. You have a mobile connection? I asked pleasantly. Kester's eyes darted toward his jacket. Of course you do, I said. But that would require configuration, passwords, hard time. The clock ticked toward 8. And the longer you hesitate, I added, the less inevitable this feels. Behind us, Dunning spoke, voice steady. Edwin, this ends now. Kester's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. You sabotaged my network, he said. I verified your contingency, I replied. He looked at the screen again. The error message blinked patiently. You were never going to send it, Claudia said quietly. Kester did not answer. Because if you had, she continued, you would have tested the system. Silence. I stepped back. Morning's almost over. Kester closed the laptop slowly. The click sounded final. The security men remained in the doorway, uncertain now whom they served. Kester removed the flash drive and held it, staring at the small piece of plastic as if it had betrayed him. No one leaves with copies, he said faintly. No one leaves compromised, Dunning replied. Kester looked up, and for the first time the polish was gone entirely. You think you've won? He said to me. I shook my head. No, I think you've lost control. The distinction mattered, and Edwin Kester understood it. For a long moment, no one spoke. The laptop remained closed, the flash drive still in Kester's hand like a prop that had lost its script. It was Claudia who broke the silence. Edwin, she said, voice level, this ends in one of two ways. Either you attempt again and we respond jointly, or you relinquish that archive and we negotiate reality instead of theater. Kester looked at her with something approaching disbelief. Negotiate. Yes, Dunning said. Collective disclosure. Managed, contextualized. Brix added, "Son with counsel present." Real counsel. Haverhill didn't smile, but the corner of his mouth moved. Dr. Shaw spoke quietly. And with your participation, Edwin. Transparent participation. Kester's fingers tightened around the flash drive. You would trust me. No, I said. We would bind you. His gaze shifted to me. You're remarkably confident for a delegate. I was instructed to be, I replied. He studied me, then the others. The security men had relaxed slightly. The tension had shifted from imminent detonation to calculation. You sabotaged my network, Kester said again, but there was less heat in it now. I confirmed you relied on illusion, I said. Big difference. Claudia took a step closer to him. You built your relevance on our secrets. We tolerated it because it was convenient. That was our mistake. Dunning nodded once. No more convenience. Kester exhaled slowly. The morning light was full now, ordinary, stripping away whatever mystique dawn had lent him. If I surrender the archive, he said, I surrender leverage. You retain survival, Brix countered. And perhaps, Shaw added, a measure of dignity. That word hung in the air like an unfamiliar guest. Kester looked at the flash drive again. You believe Mr. Wolfe orchestrated this? He anticipated you, I said. He doesn't attend mornings. He studies patterns. And what pattern am I? Kester asked quietly. A man who mistook access for authority, I said. His lips pressed thin. Haverhill stepped forward. Edwin, 5 years ago we were reckless. You were ambitious. We all thought we were untouchable. And now? Kester asked. Now, Haverhill said. We're older. It wasn't eloquent. No, but it was true. Kester walked back to the table slowly. He placed the flash drive on the polished wood. The sound it made was small, almost trivial. You assume, he said, that I have only one copy. Of course you do, I replied. Redundancy is prudent. Dunning met his gaze. Then we require access to all of it. Joint custody. Kester hesitated. Otherwise, Claudia said evenly, we proceed as though you intend to escalate. That was the line. Not shouted, not dramatic. Just firm. Kester closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the calculation had shifted from domination to containment. You will not understand what it costs, he said softly. Try us, Brix replied. There was no applause, no handshake, just a gradual repositioning of weight in the room. Kester moved to the desk again, this time without flourish, but he opened a drawer and withdrew a small external hard drive. This, he said, setting it beside the flash drive, contains the complete archive. Claudia looked at me. I shrugged slightly. Verification would come later. Passwords, Dunning said. Kester gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course. He recited them. Haverhill took out his phone and typed, hands steady now. Dr. Shaw exhaled, long and slow as though surfacing. The security men exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward uncertainly. Mr. Kester. It's fine, Kester said without looking at them. You're dismissed. They hesitated, then left. The room felt different immediately. Smaller, less staged. Claudia looked at the table. We will convene this afternoon. With independent counsel, we will determine a unified statement. And Edwin, Shaw asked, but Claudia met Kester's eyes. You will attend. He held her gaze, then nodded once. Dunning adjusted his cuffs. No more breakfasts. Agreed, Brix said. I checked my watch. 8:10. Well, I said lightly. Sunrise achieved. No one smiled, but something like relief moved around the table. Haverhill came to stand beside me. Archie, save it, I said. Thank Wolfe. He nodded. Kester remained where he was, staring at the two small devices on the table. You disrupted my design, he said quietly to me. No, I corrected. You over-designed. He looked up sharply. Leverage works best when subtle, I said. You went operatic. For a moment I thought he might argue. Instead, he gave a faint, tired smile. "And Mr. Wolfe?" he asked. "He'll be awake by now," I said, wondering whether breakfast was edible. Kester glanced toward the windows. As I reached the door, Claudia called. As I reached the door, Claudia called after me. "Mr. Goodwin." I turned. "Tell Mr. Wolfe," she said carefully, "that this will not be forgotten." I considered that. "He prefers orchids to gratitude," I said, "but I'll mention it." Outside, the city had fully woken. Traffic moved with morning impatience. The townhouse behind me looked like any other, its brief drama already swallowed by daylight. In the cab downtown, I replayed the morning. Kester had not seen it coming, not the unity, not the disabled network, not the simple arithmetic that stripped his leverage. He had built a stage and invited a witness. What he had received was an audit. By the time I let myself into the brownstone, it was nearly 9. Sir Fritz was emerging from the kitchen, and the scent of coffee drifted through the hall. Wolfe's voice carried from the office. "Archie." I hung up my coat. "Yes, sir." "Is the host enlightened?" I stepped into the office. Wolfe sat precisely as I'd left him, massive and composed, as if dawn were a rumor. "He saw morning," I said, "just not the one he planned." Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, a gesture of completion. "Good," he said. "Then breakfast was instructive." Wolfe regarded me for a moment, eyes half-lidded but alert beneath the surface. "Report," he said. I did. I gave him the arrangement of the table, the security men, the documents, the flash drive, the laptop, the error message blinking like a patient conscience. I described Kester's timing, his shift from performance to calculation, of the way Claudia Dane had stepped into the vacuum, and how the circle had reformed without him at its center. Wolfe did not interrupt. He only lifted a finger once, when I mentioned the email interface. "Pre-addressed recipients?" he asked. "Journalists, regulators, opposition researchers," I said. "Wide distribution?" He wanted spectacle. Wolfe grunted softly. "Yes." "And he never tested the connection," I added. "Relied on inevitability." "Vanity," Wolfe murmured. When I finished, the room was quiet, except for the faint ticking of the clock and the distant clatter of Fritz in the kitchen. "You disabled the network at 5? Wolfe asked. "Saul did," I said. "Requested a temporary service interruption through a cooperative technician." "Good." I leaned back in the chair opposite his desk. "They're meeting this afternoon on independent counsel. Unified statement." "As they should have done 5 years ago," Wolfe said. "You knew they would unify." "I judged it probable," he corrected. Mr. Kester's prior extraction from Mr. Brix was the fulcrum. Once exposed, it transformed him from guardian to exploiter. "And exploiters don't inspire loyalty," I said. "No?" He folded his hands over his stomach. "Did he threaten you?" "Not directly. He was too busy losing control." Wolfe's eyes opened fully at that. "Describe that." "It wasn't dramatic," I said. "No shouting. Just a shift. When the network failed, he realized inevitability was gone. After that, every second he hesitated reduced his leverage." "Yes," Wolfe said softly. "Momentum is a currency." I nodded. "He traded it for theater." Wolfe closed his eyes again, satisfied. There was a knock at the door. Fritz entered with a tray, coffee, pastries, and a look that suggested I had committed a culinary offense by eating elsewhere. "Mr. Wolfe, breakfast." Wolfe inclined his head. Fritz withdrew. I reached for a pastry. "You know," I said, "for a man who never left his chair, you caused considerable disruption." "I corrected an imbalance," Wolfe said, "by denying him his audience." "By denying him isolation," Wolfe corrected. "He required each guest to feel alone. Once that illusion collapsed, So did his structure. I chewed thoughtfully. He'll still have copies. Of course. And they'll still have exposure. Yes. Then what have we actually achieved? Wolfe opened his eyes and looked at me steadily. We have shifted the initiative. I waited. Previously, he continued, Mr. Kester controlled timing and disclosure. Now the others do, as they will move before he can reconstruct leverage. And if they don't, they will, Wolfe said. Fear shared becomes strategy. The doorbell rang. Wolfe's gaze flicked toward the hall. Archie. I went. Edwin Kester stood on the stoop. He looked composed again, but the polish had changed. Less lacquer, more restraint. Mr. Goodwin, he said. Up early, I replied. I believe I owe Mr. Wolfe a conversation. That's a rare belief, I said. Come in. In the office, Wolfe did not rise. Mr. Kester, he said calmly. Kester inclined his head. Mr. Wolfe. He remained standing until Wolfe gestured faintly toward the red chair. You miscalculated, Wolfe said without preamble. Yes, Kester replied. That admission hung between them, clean and unadorned. You relied on asymmetry, Wolfe continued. Information possessed by one party. I relied on discipline, Kester said. They lacked it before. They have acquired it, Wolfe said. Through you. Through arithmetic, Wolfe corrected. Kester glanced at me briefly, then back at Wolfe. You interfered. You invited me, Wolfe said mildly. A flicker of irritation crossed Kester's face, as observer. I observed. Silence. Kester drew a slow breath. They intend to issue a joint statement, contextualizing ages, acknowledging errors. Yes, that will diminish my archive. Yes, but not eliminate it. No. Kester's eyes narrowed slightly. You do not require its elimination. I require equilibrium, Wolfe said. You will not profit from it again. Kester considered that. And if I attempted to? You would discover, Wolfe said softly, as that their unity has hardened. And you would assist them? If necessary. Kester's mouth curved faintly. You have chosen a side. I have chosen stability, Wolfe said. Kester looked around the office. The books, the globe, the heavy desk. You defend your territory. Yes, even when the trespass is merely reputational. Wolfe's gaze sharpened. Reputation is currency. Mr. Kester, you attempted to counterfeit it. A long pause followed. I misjudged the appetite for collective survival, Kester said finally. Yes, Kester rose. Then I will adjust. Wolfe inclined his head once. Do so. At the door, Kester paused. Mr. Wolfe. Yes? There are mornings, Kester said quietly, that do not arrive. Wolfe's eyes were steady, only for those who confuse darkness with control. Kester held his gaze a second longer, then left. But I closed the door and returned to the office. Well? I asked. He will retreat, Wolfe said. For good? For now. I sank into the chair again. You ever think about charging extra for philosophy? No, Wolfe said. I charge for correction. Fritz reappeared discreetly, clearing cups. The brown stone settled back into its accustomed silence. Outside, traffic flowed. Inside, nothing had been broken, nothing rearranged, except perhaps the balance of several ambitious lives. I looked at Wolfe. You know, if Kester had waited, tested the network, staggered the pressure, he did not, Wolfe said. Because, Wolfe replied, reaching for his coffee. He was hungry. For money. For control, Wolfe said. And appetite, Archie, is most dangerous when mistaken for entitlement. He took a measured sip. I leaned back, considering that. When the host had seen morning, he just hadn't owned it. By 3 that afternoon, the Aegis initiative had resurfaced, not as scandal, but as confession. Grant Haverhill called first. I took it in the office while Wolfe pretended not to listen. "It's done," Haverhill said. His voice was steadier than it had been at dawn. "We've retained independent counsel. A joint statement goes out at 5. We acknowledge misjudgment in reallocating funds, accept collective responsibility, and outline restitution measures." "Restitution?" I asked. "A private fund to cover the shortfall from the failed development. Quietly structured. No admission of criminal conduct." "And Kester?" "He attended," Haverhill said. "He agreed to sign a declaration affirming that no recordings or documents were disseminated." "Voluntarily." A pause. "Under mutual advisement." I grinned faintly. "That's a polite way to say cornered." "He wasn't cornered," Haverhill said carefully. "He was convinced." I glanced at Wolfe. His eyes were closed, but the corner of his mouth had shifted almost imperceptibly. "You'll weather it," I said. "Yes," Haverhill replied. "We all will. Thank Mr. Wolfe." "He dislikes gratitude before dinner," I said. "Call after 8. When I hung up, Wolfe opened his eyes. "They're unified," he said. "Yes." "And Mr. Kester?" "Signed a declaration. No dissemination." Wolfe nodded once. "Prudent." At 4, Saul stopped by with a brief update. The townhouse network had been restored. No anomalous transmissions detected. No unusual digital traffic from Kester's known devices. "He'll lie low," Saul said. "For how long?" I asked. Saul shrugged slightly. "Depends on appetite." Wolfe dismissed him with a nod. By 5:30, the statement had begun to circulate in the quieter corners of the financial press. Not front-page material, yet. A measured acknowledgement of strategic error, framed as over-enthusiasm in pursuit of civic improvement. The restitution fund described as proactive stewardship. "Containment," I said, scanning the early coverage. "Preemption," Wolfe corrected. "Think it holds?" "For now," he said. At 6, the doorbell rang again. This time it was Claudia Dane. She entered without flourish, composed as ever, but with something new in her expression. Not relief exactly, but recalibration. "Mr. Wolfe," she said. "Ms. Dane." She remained standing. "It is resolved. So I am informed. We have established oversight mechanisms," she continued. "Transparency protocols. Independent review." "Wise," Wolfe said. She hesitated, then added, "Edwin has agreed to dissolve his archive." Wolfe's gaze sharpened slightly. "Agreed?" "In our presence," she said. "All copies surrendered." "Verified." "Verified how?" I asked. "Through digital forensics," she replied. "We were thorough." I believed her. Claudia Dane did not use adjectives casually. "And Mr. Kester?" Wolfe asked. "He will pivot," she said. "Consultancy. Event curation without documentation." I snorted softly. She looked at me coolly. "He has learned caution." "Has he?" Wolfe asked. "Yes," she said. "He discovered that leverage without loyalty is fragile." Wolfe inclined his head. "Indeed." Claudia studied him for a moment. "You could have destroyed him." "Yes." "You did not." "No." "Why?" Wolfe regarded her steadily. Destruction is inefficient when correction suffices." She absorbed that. "You restored balance," she said. "I restored proportion," Wolfe corrected. A faint smile touched her lips. "We misjudged you." "Yes," Wolfe said simply. She inclined her head once more. "Good evening." When she had gone, the brownstone felt complete again. No tension in the air, no tremor under the furniture. I stretched my legs out. "That's it, then." "For this episode?" Wolfe said. "You think Kester resurfaces?" "Ambition rarely retires," Wolfe said. "It adapts. Like mold." Wolfe gave me a look. Fritz entered to announce dinner. Wolfe rose, slowly, ceremonially, and moved toward the dining room with the gravity of a general reclaiming territory. At table, over duck and a sauce that justified civilization, Wolfe spoke only once of the morning. "Hosts," he said, cutting precisely, "mistake invitation for authority." "Some do," I agreed. "They believe that assembling others confers dominance. And it doesn't. It confers opportunity," Wolfe said. "Dominance requires consent." I considered that while sampling the sauce. "Kester thought he could manufacture consent," I said. "He attempted to monetize fear," Wolfe replied. "Fear is unstable." "And appetite?" I asked. Wolfe paused, then lifted his wine glass slightly. "Appetite, Archie, is honest. It declares itself. Unless it hides behind breakfast." A flicker in his eyes acknowledged that. After dinner, in the office once more, the city settling into evening hum beyond the windows, I leaned back and let the day replay itself. A host who never saw morning. He had seen it technically. The sun had risen on schedule. But what he had not seen was the moment his leverage dissolved. The instant inevitability became doubt. "You know," I said, "if the network hadn't been disabled." "He would have hesitated anyway," Wolfe said. "You're sure?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because," Wolfe said, folding his hands, "he desired submission more than destruction." I let that sit. "He wanted them to kneel," I said. "Yes." "And when they didn't?" "He discovered," Wolfe said quietly, "that dawn does not guarantee obedience." The clock ticked. Outside, headlights traced the street. I rose to close the curtains. "So," I said, "case closed." Wolfe leaned back in his chair, massive and immovable once more, the brownstone restored to its proper silence. "For now," he said, "until the next appetite mistakes itself for entitlement." I nodded. In the hallway, the house settled with a faint, contented creak. And upstairs, in the plant rooms, the orchids kept their own counsel, unconcerned with hosts, mornings, or men who believed they could choreograph the sun. The following morning arrived without invitation and without drama. No security men, no flash drives, no staged sunlight, just coffee, newspapers, and the faint rustle of Manhattan resuming its habits. I was at my desk with the early editions when Wolfe entered the office from the plant rooms, having concluded his 2 sacred hours among the orchids. He settled into his chair with the air of a man who had already resolved something. "Archie," he said. "Yes, sir." "Has the narrative matured?" I scanned the financial page again. The joint statement's holding. Editorial tone is skeptical but restrained. An emphasis on collective misjudgment and proactive restitution. No mention of Kester. "Of course not," Wolfe said. "His name never appears." "It will not," Wolfe replied. "That is the price of equilibrium." I folded the paper. "You're satisfied?" "No," he said. "I am content." That was as close as he came. I leaned back. "You know, something's been bothering me." "Only one thing?" he murmured. "Kester's call," I said. "The day before the breakfast. He invited you." "Yes." "He knew Miss Haverhill had come here?" "Likely. So he wasn't merely arrogant," I said. "He wanted you aware." Wolfe's eyes opened slightly wider. "Proceed." "He anticipated resistance," I said. "He prepared the archive, the recipients, the automation. But he also summoned a witness with reputation." "Yes. Which means," I continued, "he never intended simple blackmail. He intended adjudication." Wolfe regarded me. "He wanted legitimacy," I said. "If you had attended and remained silent, that would have conferred something. Authority, validation." "Precisely," Wolfe said softly. "So the breakfast wasn't about extracting a volunteer," I said. "It was about staging a moral tribunal, with himself as presiding judge." Wolfe inclined his head. "Very good, Archie." I grinned faintly. He didn't just want money. He wanted restoration of status. He'd been sidelined. Clients withdrawing. Lawsuits settled quietly. He needed to reassert indispensability. Yes, Wolfe said. Control disguised as service. And when they unified, I went on. He lost the script because a tribunal requires isolation, defendants seated separately. Instead, Wolfe said, no, they formed a jury. I laughed softly. Against him. Silence settled for a moment, comfortable and complete. There was a knock at the door. It was Edwin Kester. He entered without the immaculate sheen of earlier visits. Still well-dressed, still composed, but diminished in some subtle way, as if a layer had been stripped. "Mr. Wolfe," he said. "Mr. Kester." He remained standing. "I've come," Kester said, "to confirm that the archive has been dissolved." "I am aware," Wolfe said. "I wished you to hear it from me." "Why?" Kester considered that. "Because you understood something I did not." Wolfe said nothing. Kester continued, "I believed possession of information granted authority. I believed others would fear exposure more than they resented coercion." "And?" Wolfe asked. "And I miscalculated the ratio." Wolfe's gaze was steady. Fear unshared intensifies. Fear shared consolidates." "Yes," Kester said quietly. He glanced at me briefly. "You disabled my network." "I observed a vulnerability," I said. "You exposed one," he corrected. Wolfe's voice was calm. "Mr. Kester, you attempted to convert intimacy into currency." Kester nodded once. "Yes." "And discovered," Wolfe continued, "that currency without trust depreciates rapidly." A faint, almost rueful smile touched Kester's mouth. "You reduce it so cleanly." "I prefer reduction," Wolfe said. "It clarifies structure." Kester took a breath. "They will recover." "Yes. And I." "That," Wolfe said, "depends on what you have learned." Kester's eyes flicked toward the windows, where morning light filtered in, ordinary, unremarkable. "I will not curate secrets again," he said. "Good," Wolfe replied. Kester hesitated, then added, "I thought myself host." "You were," Wolfe said. Kester looked up. "But you forgot," Wolfe continued, "that the host serves." Something in Kester's expression shifted. Not indignation, not pride. Recognition. He inclined his head slightly. "Good day, Mr. Wolfe." When he had gone, the office seemed larger. I sat back down. "You think he means it?" "For now," Wolfe said. "Appetite adapting?" "Yes." I considered that. "He never saw morning," I said. Wolfe's eyes rested on me. "He arranged it," I continued. "Timed it. Choreographed the light. But he didn't see the moment control slipped." "No," Wolfe said. "He saw sunrise. He did not see consequence." I folded the newspaper neatly and set it aside. "So that's the lesson?" I asked. "There are several," Wolfe replied. "Such as?" He steepled his fingers. "First," he said, "that information is not power unless it is believed. Second, that isolation is the engine of coercion. Third, yes? That appetite must be governed," Wolfe said. "By reason, or it consumes the host." I rose to pour coffee. "And what governs reason?" I asked. Wolfe accepted the cup, inhaled once, and answered without hesitation. "Discipline." Outside, the city moved through its morning routines, unaware that a quiet tribunal had dissolved before breakfast the day before. Inside the brownstone, the air was still, orderly, untroubled. No files missing, no spice jars displaced, no sanctity disturbed. Just a host who had mistaken possession for authority, and a detective who had never needed to leave his chair to correct the error. I glanced at Wolfe over the rim of my cup. "Lunch on time today?" I asked. "Yes," he said firmly. I nodded. Oh, after all, balance restored, appetite properly governed, and the morning thoroughly accounted for. There was no reason at all to disturb the sanctity of noon.